A file known as the China dossier was cited as proof of her dubious past. It suggested that Wallis enjoyed an exotic sex life as a young married woman in Shanghai in the 1920s.
This wicked document was concocted, forged, if you like, and used to horrify Queen Mary and Mr. Baldwin and other rather important and conventional people who would be horrified if they had a story of very peculiar doings by a young woman in China. And of course the allegations in it were absolutely horrifying.
What were they?
Oh, well, that she had deliberately learned from experienced prostitutes in China various sexual methods, or whatever you like to call it, which hotted up the male species, and especially males who weren't perhaps as vigorous as they might wish, and that she'd frequented Chinese brothels and thoroughly enjoyed it all, and that it had been her métier, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, very unpleasant.
While rumors of the existence of this controversial file have existed for many years, it's now widely accepted that the allegations in it were inventions. What is significant is that the establishment needed to sink to these depths to stop Edward. For 60 years, the enduring notion has been that the only reason for Edward's downfall was his love for Mrs. Simpson. But this was the final straw for the establishment. The truth is that Edward's unacceptable political beliefs and willful actions were the key reasons for his removal. Prime Minister Baldwin finally raised the question of the king's abdication when he coldly informed Edward that Wallis, as queen, would be unacceptable to his government, the opposition, and the British Empire. Edward proposed a last-minute compromise, with Wallis relinquishing all hereditary claims. It was rejected. On December the 12th, Edward gave in and announced his abdication.
At long last, I am able to say a few words of my own, that I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and to discharge my duties as king as I would wish to do, without the help and support of the woman I love.
Edward concluded his speech by telling his subjects that he would be retiring from public life. Driven into exile and humiliated, his claim that he was withdrawing from the public stage was to ring hollow in the coming months. The ex-king and his fiancée settled in France, and in June 1937 they married at the Château de Condé in the Loire Valley. Edward's brother, King George VI, had issued strict instructions that no member of the royal family was to attend the wedding. But one thing more than anything else upset Edward. The new king had granted Edward the rank of Duke of Windsor, but had declared that Wallis Simpson could not be called Her Royal Highness. Her title would be merely the Duchess of Windsor. Edward's equerry, Dudley Forward, was given the unenviable task of informing the Duke of this royal edict immediately after his wedding.
When His Royal Highness was changing to go away, the opportunity arose when I had to inform him. And I suppose it was one of the most difficult and unhappy moments in my life, because it literally broke his heart. She, to him, was perfect, and anything that was denied her was not only an insult to her, but an insult to him. And he was shattered by it.
Edward would never forgive his brother for this insult. As the newlyweds drove away on honeymoon, he now felt free to say and do what he liked. He found a kindred spirit in the industrial tycoon Charles Beddoes. The millionaire had lent the couple his chateau for their wedding, but Beddoes had more sinister ambitions. Although he shared French and American nationality, Beddoes was a powerful supporter of the Third Reich. He was to become an economic advisor for Hitler in Vichy France, and was eventually arrested for treason by the Americans. Beddoes saw Edward as a useful ally and began scheming. He even attempted to recruit the Duke's equerry to the Nazi cause.
He came to England, stayed at Claridge's. He telephoned me and asked if I'd go and dine with him. And he said, if you play it our way, I will see that you will benefit from it. I think that he was close to Nazi Germany, and he may well have been sent over at that time. He remember he was a Frenchman, so he was able to come to London. But I suspect, I got no proof, that he was deeply involved in the German war effort.
Beddoes recruited another highly placed Nazi sympathiser in his plan to manipulate Edward. He introduced the Swedish millionaire Axel Wenner-Gren to the Duke. Wenner-Gren was one of the richest men in the world and a major arms dealer. He was close to Hermann Goering and was to play a key role in the Windsor story. Until recently, the official version has been that Edward did not meet Wenner-Gren until 1940. But we have discovered they met much earlier, here in Paris in 1937. The Swede visited Edward at his hotel. Working under instructions from Berlin, he and Beddoes extended an invitation from the Führer himself for Edward to visit Germany. The Duke and Duchess were to be Hitler's personal guests. If the British establishment thought that Edward had truly retired from public life, the news of his trip was a rude reminder that he still had political aspirations.
Well, when the royal family and indeed the British government found out that Edward planned this trip to Germany, which he had not told them about, they were horrified. From one point of view, it seemed to them to indicate that he was trying to get back center stage and take the limelight. And for another, it was interference in foreign policy at a particularly difficult moment.
Undeterred by a barrage of international criticism, the Duke and Duchess were triumphantly received at Berlin's Friedrichstrasse station. The lure of the political stage proved too great for Edward to resist. He was playing straight into Hitler's hands, who trumpeted the trip as an unofficial state visit designed to promote an agreement between England and Germany. Dudley Forward accompanied the Duke throughout the tour.
The concert consisted of classical music and terminated by them playing the national anthem, followed by the German. And there I am indeed as a very young man. The press interest as to whether or not the Duke would follow the example of the Nazis and seize their salute was quite amusing. I think he went for two reasons. One was that he hadn't appreciated that he was no longer a national figure, a man of importance, a man whose views could sway people. And therefore he hoped, because he'd never recovered from his hate of war, in the First World War, that he could persuade Hitler to stop his warlike attitude. Secondly, he had this great worship of his wife, and I think he longed for her to be shown enormous amount of flattery.